Just trust the process. And I think, again, who knows what's going to happen, but if you give up, you got to be in it to win it. And if you give up, you got no chance of winning. You miss all the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Which one said it first?
Now the private equity fund cast is about to begin. So give it up for your hosts, Devin and Jim.
So Jim, let's rewind the clock.
I love rewinding the clock. Memories.
This is the problem. You look exactly the same as you did in 2014. I look wildly different.
But we both know that I look exactly the same at 20. Like I basically ended up as 40 when I was 20, and now I'm 60 and at 20.
That's the problem. But you were in roller skates at 20.
I was in roller skates at 20. Yeah.
So we wind the clock to 2014. We have decided over a $12 bottle of Chianti to leave the firm we had been with for a long time. We took our track record, our team, and our attitude out on the road. So January 1st of 2015, we decided to get out on the road and launch the fund. We've already started the firm.
Yep.
We've got a name. We've got a plan.
We got a deck.
We've got a deck. Our wives have packed our bags and said, see you later. Good luck. Have fun. Don't worry about calling. We got it covered from here.
Well, that was your wife. My wife just changed the locks. It's so much simpler.
And, as we talked about in the prior episode, how to start a firm, like 3 things can really help. You can have a clean track record of some sort that you've done this before. You can have a deal you're going to close, ready to buy a company. We need some money for it. And you can drive investors to a first close, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that's kind of how you kick things off.
Yep.
But first, it was 6 months before we officially launched. We were kind of in the get ready phase. And also get some free advice. So the first decision is, do you go it alone or do you get help?
Psychological help, you mean?
Well, you also need that, but I would say don't stop that. Just continue to do that through your entire life.
Well, I've been seeing Lucy Van Pelt in her 5-cent psychiatry booth for years, so I'm all set.
And it shows. So you can do this by yourself, and here's what it takes. You have to come up with all the investors you want to talk to. You've got to schedule the meetings. You've got to prepare for those meetings. You've got to DIY it, which isn't so bad. But there's also this thing called a placement agent. And placement agent.
But hang on, when you think about it though, D, at that stage, right, you don't have any portfolio companies. So the whole going to the loan seems like a reasonable approach because you're working on the deck, you're setting up the meetings, but what else are you doing? Like you're not looking at companies at that point because you have no money to buy them, right?
That's true. So do it yourself. We're going to get into all the steps we did as we did it ourselves. But there's a great way to get smart and to get some free advice and to kind of calibrate whether you're as good as you think you are and how long this might take. So in the 6 months prior to launching, as we were getting ready to get ready, we decided to take a bunch of meetings with placement agents. So what's a placement agent?
Yeah, exactly.
What's a placement agent?
Well, it's an agent who places stuff, I assume, of some sort.
Yeah. So a placement agent is basically an investment bank for fundraising. So you would hire an investment bank to sell your company. You could hire an investment bank effectively to help you raise the fund. So they help you put marketing materials together. They call potential investors. They prep you for those meetings. They keep in touch with those investors and kind of run the process. So the reason we decided to hire to meet with placement agents in the hopes of hiring one, which was we had a portfolio from our prior jobs. We were still managing it.
Yep.
So unlike a clean slate, we did have a day job, which was important not only because we had invested in these companies, but 2, it was going to become ultimately our track record.
Which was largely unrealized. At that point.
At that time.
At that point.
Right? There had been good progress and some success, but largely unrealized. We like bringing smart people around the table to help us think through things. So here's kind of our view on the placement agent side. So what should you expect? 1, they've got really good market insight. There's really big ones like UBS. There's really niche ones like M2O, right? Just like investment banks, there's the bulge brackets and then there's the niche guys. Some of the niche people really focus in the areas that you may be particularly good in. There's placement agents who've raised lots of healthcare funds, who've raised lots of venture funds, growth equity funds. small buyout funds across various sectors. And there's placement agents who raise capital for the big guys. And some of those things have been brought in-house recently. But what you get in a placement agent meeting, which you would also get in like shopping for an investment banker to sell your company, would be they're going to listen to the pitch. They're going to ask you lots of questions, many of the same questions you're going to get asked from a limited partner, and they're going to give you some feedback. And it's important that, in our opinion, you take that feedback because they only get paid if you raise the fund. And they may not hire you, but you're going to at least get some advice, or you may decide not to use one, but in the process, you'll learn some things.
But so if you're a small fund, go into placement agents, almost all of them will take a meeting if you have any kind of track record or any kind of plan. That doesn't mean they're going to take you though as a client, because they don't want to take on tough jobs either. So they're looking at, hey, I know a group of investors, you got a story. They're trying to figure out if your story matches, is it going to be easy? Because they want it to be easy. If it's going to be really hard, you might do a lot of shopping for placement agents. And that's a good sign for investing. If you go through a lot of placement agent meetings and nobody's really interested in taking you, that's going to tell you something. Like we may need to rethink our story or change how we're going to do this, because you're not getting traction with the guys who are going to get you in the door.
Yeah, and I think the value of these placement agent meetings is, to your point, they're probably going to say, yes, somebody from my firm will hear the pitch. Why not? They're in the business of hearing what's going on, developing relationships. So you're probably going to get a yes if you got any credibility. Somebody at that firm's going to want to hear the pitch. You get to practice the pitch.
Yep.
So you've put this deck together. You haven't talked to any limited partners, but you haven't practiced it other than on your wife and kids.
Who fell asleep during the whole thing?
Well, my wife turned me down before I got to page 3. So, I knew.
She was always smarter than you. Gina always knew what she was doing, right?
So you get to practice the pitch, which is in real life environment with some stakes.
I would say tougher stakes, because as we found, LPs, if they don't love the story, they're still really nice for the most part, right? They're just But placement agents, man, they will be like, "Ooh, this is bad," or they will be rough. Right?
Totally. So that's good.
Yeah,
2,
absolutely.
You get lots of advice, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything for you to take the meeting, for them to take the meeting, and you're getting advice to the point of like, hey, this is going to be a really hard putt, because they all like to talk in golf metaphors.
Yeah, I have no
This is a
idea
really
why
long putt, they would say. You're going to get market intel. You're going to say, hey, we've been out in the market with a fund just like yours, and this is what the market said, right? Or this is what was different than you guys, and this is, was their process and how it went. And you're going to find who's a good fit. And how do you decide who's a good fit placement agent? Just like you find a good fit real estate agent or a good fit headhunter. They've done a transaction about the same size and about the same market in the recent weeks and months prior to working with you. So they have really good intel about what people are going to say, and they know who to go to.
Well, and the next piece of that, though, like a real estate agent, since the law changed last year, so it's not the guaranteed 6%, then the conversation is, you want to use that placement agent, they want to use you, how much is it going to cost you, right? As part of that, because that's
true.
Some of these guys could be, hey, we'll take you, but we're going to charge you an arm and a leg because it's going to be a tough raise, right?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of negotiation in what that arrangement looks like, just like with anybody else you would hire. And there's expectations of who does what. So I'm here to, as we know from this process, placement agent isn't going to write your pitch deck for you.
Nope.
Placement agent is not going to write your PPM for you, which we'll get into. They're really an agent to get you meetings, to prep you for the meeting and get feedback, and to drive some scarcity or drive people to a decision. But if you think they're going to sit down with you and write come up with your strategy, hone your strategy, and put all the materials together, that is not the expectation, and you should,
But that's often how the same investment bank works on selling a company side. They'll do all of that because they want to be part of it. That's one of the big differences with the placement agents. Like, they're going to critique your deck, but they're not going to write it.
And that's super valuable. And then the cost would be, they're usually charging 1% to 3%, somewhere in that range, based on fund size. There may be a minimum. Hey, you're raising a small fund. We don't get out of bed for less than $1 million. So you're paying a higher percentage on a minimum. And maybe for a $1 billion fund, they're charging a smaller percentage and making a few $1 million. Who knows? So that is negotiable to some degree. And then there may be some like carve outs. You may say, hey, I'm going to hire you, but I already have relationships with these handful of LPs. That may make the relationship less attractive to the placement agent. And because you're carving things out, again, just like a headhunter. And they may want to charge you more for the smaller, list of LPs that they can go for. Or they may decide, hey, that money raise is just too small for us. It's not worth
the time and effort. Yep.
For sure.
Well, they hand you the new person on their deal team to be the person who takes you around.
Exactly. Have you met Lonnie, Jagdish, and Mohammed?
Super. You have lots of funds to raise, huh?
Exactly. So that happens. And it's just really good reps, in my opinion. But just like LPs, just like companies that you want to buy, there's some people that just aren't a good fit. So don't waste your time talking to the placement agents who raise billion-dollar funds if you want to raise a $200 million fund. Right? Don't talk to the niche guys who are great at raising that emerging manager $100 million first fund if you're trying to raise a $5 billion fund. And you can find all this out on their website. You can find it out, poking around. Go on Preqin, go on Pitch Deck. You can see all the other GPs they've raised money for, probably because they promote it on their website, and also there are databases that can do that. And you can say, oh, like for us 10 years ago, we were like, who raised for Rubicon? Who raised for Mainsail? Who raised for Luminate, down the line.
Yep.
Did they use a placement agent? If they did, I want to talk to them because they'll be giving us, while we're not directly competitive with any of those guys, adjacent enough that the same LPs who would be interested in those funds would be interested in our fund. And they could say, hey, they're going to like this part of your pitch, but they're not going to like this other part. Super valuable information, costs you nothing.
Yep.
And it gets you ready to get ready before you raise the fund. So we decided, well, let's be fair. If a great placement agent, somebody with a high reputation and high quality in our sector, had said, yes, we'll take you on in the summer of 2014.
We would have done it.
We would have done it, for sure. So they said the ones we wanted didn't want us, and the ones we didn't want wanted us. Why was that? We were a spin out. So not as clean of a story of, hey, I did 4 or 5 fundless sponsor deals as a first-time fund, and now I'm raising my own fund. The attribution is clear. This was the team. This is all these things. Another reason, we had a good but unrealized track record, right? It was trending well, but it wasn't fully realized.
Meaning we hadn't sold the companies. They looked more valuable. We were writing them up. Things were going in the right direction, but we hadn't sold any of them.
We had taken some money out of one, and the others were trending nicely. But it was kind of like, hey, why would a real estate agent take on a hard house to sell? Why would a placement agent take on a hard deal to do? Because by taking us on, they wouldn't have been able to take on a competitor to ours at the same time.
Opportunity cost.
They may have 4 or 5 funds going at any one time, generally different sizes, different sectors. But as we talked to people, they were like, hey, I've got so-and-so coming up in 6 or 7 months. If I take you on, that's going to conflict with that. And we don't want to have 2 competing products in the market at the same time. So we decided to go it alone.
We decided because nobody wanted us to go it alone. Yeah, we made that decision. Yeah,
exactly. Why are you sitting on a Friday night at a gas and sip? Conscious choice.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were the Lloyd Dobler,
waiting for the sushi bar to open. Yeah, we had the boombox outside of every LP's office. Playing away.
Say Anything in our first fundraise, pretty much almost a documentary, chasing the girl and eventually winning. So what do you need to get ready? We had been involved in fundraising before at other funds, other firms, and we had gotten a lot of really good advice from placement agents. One in particular who was like, hey, I like you guys. I'm not going to take you on because it's going to be too hard. And you're not raising enough.
Yep.
Right. So if it was a hard $1 billion raise, I can make this is worth the effort. A hard $200 million raise, which was our initial target, you just can't make enough money on it for the effort. So we respected that. So what do we need? We need a pitch deck.
We get some advice on the pitch deck, which ended up with a lot of those bean stick figures, which was very odd.
We did hire an advisor early who was like a retired LP, really smart guy, knew everybody. Fantastic. He did a first cut of the pitch, and you know me. Yeah. I care about how things look and feel, want it to feel authentic, and his first version of it had a lot of clip art in it. That was painful.
And we found out later that he almost killed his own wife with his homegrown helicopter, so that he built himself. So yeah, maybe not the best decision on the first.
These
time.
were amazing stories. So hey, so don't fly in a homemade helicopter with him.
100%.
And don't have him make a PowerPoint deck for
Yes.
you. But good advice, maybe bad PowerPoint skills. So a pitch deck. You're going to have one. You're going to do it. You're going to show it to placement agents. They're going to critique it, and you're going to fix it. Right? Maybe the order's wrong. Maybe the emphasis is wrong. Maybe it's too long. Maybe it's too short. So that's helpful. Legal documents. We can have other podcasts about when these legal documents need to be done, and we can bring in experts to talk about it, which we will and have done before.
And the same thing with pitch deck. Like there's a structure to a pitch deck.
Totally. So you need a PPM, right? A PPM is basically just the prospectus for the fund. It's a legal document. It's often the first thing required to give to an LP before they can start their work. And it definitely puts you in the I'm fundraising category rather than a pitch deck. You can have a pitch deck extended around. A PPM actually has some compliance requirements around. You can't just willy-nilly send it to anybody, and there needs to be a little bit of work. But a PPM is often what LPs use to really kick off a fundraising. So that, I would say, you could start fundraising without one while you're working on it, but somebody's going to ask for it. You want to say, hey, wait a month while I work with Kirkland and Ellis or whoever to get it done. Then you need a limited partner agreement. Again, do you need it the day you launch? Probably not. Limited partner agreement is the legal document. It's like a purchase agreement for a company you would buy. You get it at the end, you sign it. It's a highly negotiated document. But as soon as an LP gets rolling, they're going to want to see the limited partner agreement. And we'll get into why and what's in it in a little bit and how you negotiate it. And there's kind of a lot of signaling in that document. Are you being really LP friendly? Or are you being GP friendly?
Give me an example of that.
So LP friendly would be, hey, we're not charging 2% management fee. We're charging less. We're just going to charge fees based on a budget instead of the 2 and 20 model. Hey, if at this return we get 10% carry. At this return we get 20. At this return we get 25 or 30. Right. So maybe staggered carried interest. What the LPs have rights to do and rights to see. Like, can they shut the fund down, at certain limitations if they don't like what's going on? Usually that's a very high percentage, vote required. Maybe you have a lower percentage vote. An American waterfall versus a European waterfall in terms of when the carry gets paid. Does it get paid out over time or does it get paid out at the end? This is all signaling like, hey, are these terms very attractive to me and I'm going to be easy to negotiate, or do I need to fight for everything in the LPA? And a lot of times there'll be a draft of that in the data room and they'll be able to eyeball it. Nobody's going to look at the LPA unless they're serious, but there is a lot of signaling that goes on in that document.
Right, and it is, it is, by the way, for first-time funds, it's a very important thing because that's where a lot of those decisions get made. Like they might say, we really like you, but not at 2 and 20, we don't.
And it would be highly, highly negotiated and individually negotiated by every investor that comes into the fund. And you need a GP documents. I would argue maybe you don't need those right when you start, but the GP document, the general partner agreement, basically defines how the firm runs, right? And the decision-making around the firm, not the fund. So this is kind of the internal document among the owners.
But that's super important. I think people ignore that because it gives you the problem of how do you get rid of a partner? That can be hard if it requires a unanimous vote, or that it puts the structural things that allow what happens if a partner gets, severely disabled and can't work, or, leaves early or can't meet their commitment. Like it covers a lot of the stuff that, and if you don't do it, it's going to be a mess when these things happen.
This is where we've seen it gone wrong.
Yeah.
In other examples is there's one dominant person in the firm. Maybe the firm's even named after this person. And then there's a team below them. And they're like, we'll get to the GP agreement later. And you say, okay, well, let's trust it. Let's go fundraising. We'll do that. And then the fund's ready to be closed and done and dusted. And then you get a copy of the GP agreement. You're like, oh my gosh, I never would have agreed to this. And I have no power. I have no vote. This is basically a one-man band. And that one man is like, too bad. The fund is raised,
Sign it or don't.
Or don't. And there may be advantage to why that one person is doing it, or kind of the power structure inside the organization is doing it that way. It's not by accident, probably. But if you're a GP part of if you're in the GP or you're a senior person of the firm, I would want to see the GP agreement before we go launch the fund.
Yes.
Because I would say like, well, I don't really like the terms here. I don't like my deal here. And maybe I won't go along. So there's risk in that, because if you're out fundraising and somebody on the team leaves because they don't like the deal they're going to get, you would want that sorted before you launch. And you certainly don't want to stuff people at the end. Again, we'll have a whole other podcast about GP agreements and the ins and outs of that with a lawyer here to talk about that. But that's how the PPM is the legal document for like the document that kicks off the fundraise. That is the kind of legal prospectus, like you would have an S1. It's basically the S1 equivalent. The LPA governs how the GP works with the limited partners in that fund, and there's a different LPA for each fund. And there are GP documents that manage not only the fund, but the firm. And that's important.
And here's a tip, kids. Don't go to ChatGPT and say, generate me a PPM of this. This is a legal document.
And one of the reasons why you wouldn't dive in this whole hog right away is the startup costs. It's expensive. But like we've talked about before, a good lawyer is going to say, we'll deal with this at the end. And all this stuff is organizational costs that get reimbursed by your LPs once you're done, by and large. But you should think about managing that cost, but I wouldn't be cheap on it. All right, so how about the DDQ? So the DDQ is the due diligence questionnaire. It is a monster document that basically explains everything an LP would need to know about you, the fund, the firm, compliance, investment strategy, track record, salaries, carry splits, everything. So
this is where you have to answer have you been convicted of a felony? And you get to go, convicted? No.
Exactly. So there are templates out there you can just download. There's actually one from the International Limited Partner Association called ILPA. They have a template for a DDQ that makes it very easy. The challenge with that DDQ, with that ILPA DDQ, is they want everything. It's standardized, and there may be, for whatever reason, you want to answer questions differently, or you want to answer different questions. So taking the ILPA DDQ, you're kind of saying, hey, it's an LP-friendly move, as we talked about the LPA. Using that, people would say like, oh, okay, they're being very transparent. They're sharing what the International Limited Partner Association has decided are the standard questions asked in the standard way with the standard set of answers, or you may decide to use something else. So I wouldn't mix and match. If you're going to go full ILPA and just do it. But you want this in the data room day one.
Just so people are clear, this is for this fund. All of these are unique per each fund. So you may be very LP friendly with these documents in fund one and you crush it. And in fund two, you're like, sorry, dudes, we're 3 and 30 and American Waterfall, because you can.
Sure. Right? Exactly. It's kind of also like pre-Cana.
Nice. What a deep pull.
It's like a good exercise to go through before you get betrothed or before you jump off the bridge together, because it's going to ask you all these questions that maybe you haven't thought of before, or it's going to ask you questions that maybe are a little uncomfortable to answer, given kind of like, hey, what's the carry splits across the team? You may not want to answer that right away because you're holding back the GP agreement. You haven't told your team yet.
Yep.
Right? Not our style, but certainly common in our industry for people not to exactly know what they have until the fund is fully raised. But it is kind of walks you and your team through a standard set of things that pre-Cana would say, do you have separate bank accounts or do you merge your bank accounts?
Yes, but you don't have to be back to back when you answer the question. Like stand up if you have we don't have to do that, right?
So then you have track record. Okay, so what is
what is a track record?
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Maybe you worked at a prior fund. Maybe you were a fundless sponsor and have multiple investments you've made on your own. Maybe you were inside a corporation and did corporate development and invested and bought companies for a corporation. So track record can be different across all different experiences. But if you've invested before, the big question would be, if you were at a private equity firm, another firm you were spinning out of leaving, the big question would be, do you have attribution? That is the key question. Are you allowed to use this track record? And when you leave a firm, that will be a highly negotiated point of whether or not you're allowed to use your track record for future fundraising purposes outside of that firm.
It's multi-layered, right? Because you might be in the category of, okay, we're saying, hey, this is on my track record. I sourced this deal, but I didn't close it. I didn't run it. In my case, I was the operating partner on that deal, didn't source it, might have done the diligence, ran it on a day-to-day basis. I might have been on the board. So these can be complex, right?
Yeah, if you
There's
have
nuance here.
If you haven't invested but operated, you're going to have a different track record, or maybe you don't include it. You include like, hey, this was the impact I had on businesses, and what you show in the track record is really numbers and a story, right? The business went from this to that. Here's why, because I did these things, right? It's okay to say I in your track record, but you need, if you have a track record from a prior firm, you're going to need an agreement to use that. Given the way our situation ended and how amicable it was, we had full attribution for our track record. We worked we ran a sector group, so it was pretty clear we did these deals, we didn't do those deals. But we laid out, here's who sourced it, here's who executed it, here's who was on the board, who was the operating person or people involved in the investment, and here's who was on the board when it exited. That may have been a little too much detail, and I think we kind of fell into the category of like more data is better, more detail is better. But in some of those cases, some of our prior team who didn't come along with us, maybe because we had two partners on every deal structure and one partner leading each sector. So it's like, hey, I was on the board and another partner was on the board, and that other partner isn't involved in Parker Gale. So you'd be like, oh, good. That would be a great reference to make. I'm going to call that partner and ask, like, hey, is this true? But if you don't have attribution for your track record, highly risky to go out there waving it around. So it's better to not show your track record if you don't have legal rights to use it than to show it and then get caught. Data room, everybody knows what a data room is. You should have that ready to go. Whether all these things we're talking about are in it on day one, don't know. But most of your meetings are going to end with invite us into the data room.
Yeah, but if you're a first-time fund, just to be clear, I mean, you could stick stuff on a Dropbox and say that's my data room, but you don't want to do that because you want to basically be able to see if they open the document, see if they downloaded, how many times they did. The data rooms are designed to make sure that you, as the firm, sees what people from the companies you're pitching are actually opening the documents. Have they ever read anything? Have they downloaded them? What are they doing? That gives us visibility into, we just had this meeting and they crushed the data room an hour later. Okay, that tells us something that we had a hit. Or, we did the meeting and a week later, nobody's touched the data room. We're like, yeah, these guys aren't really seriously considering us.
Totally agree. Spend a little bit of money. It doesn't cost much to have a professional data room where there's tracking and levels and compliance and registration and all these things. Because someday the SEC is going to come into the office and they're going to want to see all these details. So saying, oh, we had a Dropbox. I have no idea who was in it. I have no idea who they shared it with. No idea what they looked at and what they didn't. And compliance would say there's like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 data room, right? You don't just give somebody everything.
Yep.
They got to start with a PPM. They got to ask for it. You got to register them. You got to keep track of them. And then behind the scenes, you can see who's in or who isn't, just like if you were in an investment banking process selling a business. And a lot of LPs, we have found, think they've got some sort of cloak of invisibility where they're like, oh, we're really interested. Really, we're still doing our work. We're still really interested. And you're like, you haven't logged into the data room ever. Yeah. And you asked for her invite the day we met.
Yeah.
So that it does help.
And that has happened.
It does help from a, hey, are they serious or not?
And these products are not expensive.
No.
You literally, you can pick any one you want. It doesn't really matter in my experience. There's really pricey ones. Sure, you can spend that, but you don't have to. I mean, I think we spent $2,000.
Yeah. For the entire process.
Yeah.
Totally. And then your team. So as far as like, who's the team? What are their backgrounds? What's their experience? What's their individual track records? What have they worked on? What are they getting paid? What's their carry? You want to have all that sorted before you launch because you're going to get asked. You may not want to share it with everybody on your team and be super open about it. But not knowing the answer, or we're going to get to that later, would be viewed as highly risky.
Yep.
It's like, oh, you're presenting this great team, but they don't know what their deal is. That's a little risky to me. Are they going to stay? Are they going to go? Are they going to be here? Do you own the whole thing and nobody gets anything? They're just employees, or have you widely shared the equity of the firm with this very impressive, talented team you've been telling me about? So that's a little bit of a check on, are they sharing the wealth, or is this highly concentrated? So that's kind of like the get ready stuff. And then you got to hit the road. You get to find out if you're any good. Get to find
That's
out
when the rubber meets the road. No pun intended, brother.
for sure. So how do you build your target LP list? Well, step one would be, well, I have a bunch of LPs from my prior firm who love what I did and told me to spin out and start my own firm. Or I have a bunch of investors from my fundless sponsor, independent sponsor track record who have said, hey, let's go raise an institutional fund and we'll seed it for you and get you started. Maybe you've got friends at other firms who really like you and think you're doing something interesting and would say, hey, I've got a few LPs who might like this. Let me make an introduction.
Well, especially if you're at a prior fund, you may be the second partner on a deal, somebody else, and the LPs for that, the co-investors, maybe potential LPs. They like, hey, I loved having you on the board.
Totally.
And gee, if you ever spin out, let us know because we'd love to invest directly with you.
This is the time to call in the favors and call in the friends. So you've done that 6 months of meet all the placement agents. Now easier than ever. You probably do most of those meetings on Zoom. Back in the day, we were flying places to have one meeting, turning around and flying back, trying to maybe meet a company or some bankers while we were in town. Now you can largely do a lot of these on Zoom.
Let's be clear here. We never did that. We always loaded up the day, even if it was only one day, like always. So if you're going to some city,
hard to do.
It is hard to do. I mean, we've walked with a sandwich board down the main street saying raising a fund. So
yeah, you say like, hey, I'm going to be in Atlanta sometime in the next few weeks. Like, when's a good time to meet? And they're like, oh, I'm in here that day. I was like, oh, that's the day I'm going to be there.
100%.
Yeah,
what a coincidence.
Yeah, that's the day I'm going to be there. So this is the time to call in all your favors, all your friends. Hey guys, I can't start with nothing, especially if it's DIY. Like, can you introduce me to some of your LPs, some of your investors who might like this? Some of those placement agents you met say like, hey, you're not a fit for me. We're not going to work together. But there's this LP I know who'd be really interested in hearing this. And similar to placement agents, if you have some credibility, most LPs are going to take the meeting.
Yeah.
You may not get the head guy, the CIO to take the meeting, just like you may not get the head founder of a private equity firm to take the first meeting with management. But you're likely going to get somebody in there. Why? Because they're curious about what you're doing, how you're doing it. Maybe they've got a competitive investment in another firm. They're curious to hear what you have to say. Maybe you've got some market knowledge they could benefit from.
And sometimes, let's be frank, it's the junior person of the deal team. Like, hey, go, Fred, go get some practice.
Yeah, get some reps. Yeah, why not? Same thing. So I would respect that and do that. I'd also do your research on all the good fit LPs. Again, just like placement agents work with these funds before that look like me, I can look at a database and say, oh, these LPs have investments in these funds that are just like mine. Or these LPs have invested in first-time funds. These LPs have invested in fundless sponsors or non-traditional funds. Because you're just wasting your time if you're calling on a sovereign wealth fund that invests $1 billion at a time and you're raising a $100 million fund. It's just wasted calories, so why do it?
I mean, you do have to do that. You do have to treat it like a sales call even before you get there, right? So if you're looking at somebody who says, hey, we really want to talk to you, and they've never invested in a first-time fund, that's a hard, we found that as a hard, it's unlikely they're coming in, right? Unless there's some super massive compelling event. So you're really spinning your wheels, right?
And if you have a placement agent, you're going to sit down for weeks ahead of the launch and they're going to start staging it. They're going to talk to their network. They're going to send them an intro deck that, is compliance ready. And they're going to get feedback. They're going to schedule meetings for you. Again, they're largely there to schedule meetings, to drive urgency, and to get feedback. And to interpret what an LP says to you.
Because that's what they do.
Totally.
Right. And to be fair, just get yourself prepped. The first LP meetings probably won't go great, and they're not setting up the best LPs in the first meeting. It's a little batting practice. You got to be live. Yeah.
Totally. So I think you'd really want to rely on your placement agent. If you're like, hey, we're going to take this meeting, they're going to prep you for it. They're not going to say yes, but this is good practice. Or they already have a competitor, but they'll have good reaction. They'll be able to see what you're doing. They get it, and they'll give you some.
Or they're not interested in this sector, but they're thinking about it in the future. So,
And who are you just to show up and ask for $50 million from somebody and have them say, oh yeah, let me give it to you. I think you have to be patient.
Sure.
And you got to get density, like you said, like doing one meeting a week, or you try and bunch it up, try and get, multiple meetings, try and tell the story to as many people as you can. and with Zoom and post-COVID, it's much, much easier. I mean, 10 years ago, to have a meeting, we had to get on a plane.
Yes.
We didn't do a conference call for a meeting.
No.
You had to get on a plane and go see them, which again, costs money, trying to get 3 or 4 meetings in a day.
If you're working an existing portfolio or existing companies, it's tough because you're tied up a lot in that travel and the dead time between those meetings.
Yeah. And boo-hoo, you're trying to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. It's hard. Get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it can be fun too.
So what happens behind closed doors? So it's story time now.
It's story time, baby.
It's story time. So I'd say put your ego in your pocket, right? A lot of PE folks complain about fundraising. They stuck me with the junior guy. They showed up late. They weren't prepared. They didn't ask any questions. They just stared at me blankly. They didn't follow up. And
you have hit none. We had all those things, but you had none of the best stories for us, man, because
Exactly.
we top all of those, brother.
Yeah. So practice. I mean, you just want reps. You want reps. You did it with the placement agents. Maybe you did it with your friends. I'd even say, like, before you go out, tape yourself giving the pitch. Tape whoever the tag team is giving the pitch. Watch it afterwards. Tell each other what you do. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody does it because it's painful to do. It's painful to watch. And guys in private equity have big egos and they don't want to embarrass themselves. But you might have somebody on the team who's really good at explaining certain things and somebody on the team who's really good at the numbers side of things. And somebody's a really good storyteller. Like, put your power players in the right positions to win and don't think it has to be your ego because you're the guy who launched it. Bring around people who can really help you.
Well, and plus at the same time, you're going to get feedback from the placement agent when you do those meetings about what you answered well and not well. And sometimes it says you get the right answer, you just didn't say it the right way. So that's, you should start building up that list of, what we say objection handling. What questions are we getting and how should we be answering it? Because you go out after practicing a deck with those questions and answers, but you're going to get new stuff from new. Sometimes you get great questions like the one we got. Remember that one company, the Royal?
Yeah.
Well, what the associate asked us, what if Royal lost all their customers and had no more revenue? And I said, well, we'd lose all our money and the company would go bankrupt. And he turned to like his boss. He's like, huh? He nodded like, look what I just did. I'm like, not really sure there, dude. That works for every company. Like,
there's always one associate named Kenny in the room trying to just pop your balloon.
They killed Kenny.
Yeah. Exactly. Trying to pop your balloon. So, but how many GPs actually, one, tape themselves doing the pitch and like critique it and try and get better at it?
That would be the null set.
Yeah.
0.
And then how many actually write down all the questions they got into a FAQ or some sort of document with the right, here's a better answer here's the right answer for this question. Like, why'd you lose money on that deal? Half an hour later, you're still digging yourself out of the hole and the placement agent is on the ride back to the airport. If you have a good one, is like, whoa. They didn't ask the question for the answer. They asked the question to see how you answered it. And you dug yourself a hole by trying to,
the sun was in my eyes. Exactly. The dog ate my homework.
Management, got, lost their minds. So
the worst PE guys come out of that meeting, and if they didn't get, the feedback wasn't good, and those guys are stupid. They just don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get it. They're not smart enough.
We'll get to that later about kind of how to stay sane during fundraising. I would say the downside with Zoom is that the in-person stories are way better than the Zoom stories. Way better than the Zoom stories. So like, let's talk about getting the junior guys rather than the main guy.
Sure. We had that a number of times, right? So the big dog. So this was we're going to start with our New York trip. I guess that was really so what was that? 24 meetings in 1 week.
Yeah.
So Monday through Friday.
In 3 cities. Yeah.
Well, technically 4 because we did New York and Connecticut and Boston and Atlanta, right? Yeah. So those 24 meetings. You get to New York and you got the guy his name is on the door and he invests billions of dollars and you got Kenny.
It's like, Lonnie, Jagdish Muhammad, here's Parker Gale.
But here's the thing. You got to give Kenny the show. No matter how disappointed you are, like every potential LP gets the show.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Oh,
right? And that's hard.
And
right?
you booked the meeting with the senior guy through a good friend of yours who he's an LP in.
Yeah.
Who's an LP of. And so you had the warmest lead possible. And he just got called away to London last minute. And Kenny called away to London last minute. And Kenny's there to take notes and ask all the obvious questions. And you know what? You're going to butter Kenny up as much as possible, and you're going to give him a great show.
Yeah, but sometimes you remember. So this was day 2 in New York in that giant building, and we had the Kenny.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, it went well. And we said, "Hey, can we just stop into the big boss office for 2 seconds?" He's like, "Oh, he's not even in today. He's scheduled for vacation 3 weeks ago." I'm like, "Really? And he booked this meeting with us." All right.
Hey, you got to play that game.
Yeah, you got to play that game, dude.
Right? Like, and if somebody came in here and disrespected one of our associates because they didn't feel like they were getting the look, that would be a bad sign for us.
Absolutely.
You got to run through the gauntlet, and sometimes the gauntlet starts with Kenny. All right,
but you can sort of tell there's a Kenny and there's like a real Kenny. If it's like Kenny as in, let's see, we'll go with Night Shift, the boss's cousin, like that Bonnie Rebel. What an actor! I mean, sometimes the guy's like, this guy's not even like, this is somebody's cousin, so this is never happening. So you still be nice, but like, we're not getting a call back ever.
Totally. And then we had the narcoleptic. Narcoleptic, or we just bored her to death that she fell asleep.
But you got to set the stage because it was quite a building we were in New York. Right?
So you're in New York and you're in some like C-class building, and it's got like 2 elevators that go really slowly and like make noise on the way up. And you're just like, where are we? I don't even remember where we were.
We were in the Upper East Side. It was a very expensive townhouse. Okay. Yeah, really.
So we go up the elevator, we get off the place. You're like literally right in the lobby of some like nondescript office. We go in this the conference room was as big as this table.
Down the stairs, remember? So the dusty stairs, it was literally one of those like, keep going. It was sort of like when De Niro was pushing her at the end of Goodfellas. Like, no, you got to be safe. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here.
We sit in there. 2 people come in, 4 of us at this tiny little table. And 10 minutes in, there's a guy and a woman. The woman is slowly
she was
head on the table. Yeah. The guy next to her pretended like it wasn't happening.
It didn't even faze him. Didn't sense it, didn't mention it, nothing. Right.
I was staring straight at him, looking at her, staring at him, looking at her. He wouldn't look over to me thinking like, oh, this has happened before. But I would have said like, oh, sometimes she just falls asleep. It's okay. She'll wake up.
Of course, right. But no.
And then she woke up. And then we all pretended like it never happened. Did we get the order?
Hell no.
No.
Right. We did not get the order. Right.
That would have been amazing if we actually got the order after that one.
No, I think if we had been representing like, Ambien or something, we may have.
Did you, we got kicked out of the meeting in the rain.
No. Next was the conference room where the fight was happening next to a huge screaming match between 2 of the GPs in the room next to the conference room.
So we get sent in the conference room for the pitch. A woman comes in to hear the pitch. And while we're talking, there's a screaming match in the office next to us, which she, I believe, just pretended wasn't happening.
100% pretended wasn't. And this was not like, you could hear a little
noise.
This was like screaming. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This was top of the
line. Full on
screaming.
Right.
Yeah. Who knows what was going on in the other room?
Idea. Yeah.
But again, we all pretended it didn't happen. Did we get the order?
No.
Okay.
But I think those were the people who strung us along twice. No, that was the group after them. Same neighborhood. You remember that?
No, I don't. Your memory is amazing. We don't need to get that.
God.
We'll get into this later. Then we got kicked out in the rain.
Yes.
So we drove all the way out to Connecticut on the New York trip all the way out. So we go up to, Connecticut, kind of Westchester East, and we're in a meeting with an LP. It's the end of the day.
Well, you're missing the key part of the story. Our placement agent. So we should talk about that point, right?
We'll get there.
But the dude dropped us at the customer. You remember that?
Yeah.
Dropped us and went home.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Because he lived in Westchester at this point. So, so we're in the meeting. We have
Thursday night.
We have a pleasant meeting on a Thursday night with this guy. It's dark because I believe it was wintertime. So it's dark early. It starts pouring rain, like torrential rain. At 6 o'clock, he's like, hey, I got to go catch the train. But you can't stay in the office because you're the only ones.
Which we were fine. Like, we'll just stand in the lobby. No, he meant the whole building.
No, you need to leave the building. And it was one of these like weird Connecticut suburban offices that didn't have like a vestibule. So we call an Uber. Uber's like, we'll be there in 30 minutes.
We stood in the rain.
Because we didn't know we were going to we were getting kicked out. So we would have called an Uber way ahead of time. We stood there in the absolute pouring rain, got drenched. While we waited for this Uber to come. Did we get the ticket? Did we get the order?
We didn't. No,
we didn't.
Of course not. But we did have a really good dinner at Danielle Boulet's.
We did.
DB. That was,
we did.
Then we rewarded ourselves for like a rough,
And then we had the meeting where I went up.
No, wait, you're skipping this is the version of the Kenny where we went in and the mid-level dude said, "Oh yeah, we're a hedge fund and we only invest in hedge funds." And we're like, "Well, I'm not really sure why we're here because we don't have that product,
Yeah.
And he still wanted to hear the pitch. We're like, something you'll never and cannot invest in, but you want to hear the pitch. Okay.
We gave him the show.
Yeah.
Did we get the order?
No, we did not.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So then we both go into one of these big buildings and it's post 9/11. So like you got to get checked in. They didn't put you on the list.
Do you remember who was the main tenant of that building? Al Jazeera.
Oh,
that's why.
Right.
Yeah. Remember that?
Right. Yeah.
That part. Yeah.
So we go in. You can't get up.
Because I didn't put my name on that.
I was like, hey man, I got to get up there now for this meeting. I go in, I tell the receptionist, hey, Jim, my partner Jim isn't on the list. Can you put him on the list so we can get up? She's like, oh, sure, honey. I go into the meeting. There's like 25 people in there. And I'm just like, okay, we just got to go. So we went.
And I never
made it up.
My name never got on and I never made it up. Yep.
And I was just like, dude, what the hell? What the heck? So that happened. Did we get the order? No,
we did not get the order.
All right. So how about some advice for how to kick off a meeting? Kind of I've talked about this a lot. I've blogged about this before and talked about it. So I'll go through it quick. Like every meeting starts with the same exact way. And you actually can control it if you are prepared ahead of time. So have them introduce themselves and introduce their program. So, hey, they'll say, hey, well, they'll always say, should we tell you a little bit about our program and private equity? You're like, yeah, great. And they'll go through their pitch, which is great. And you want to be listening intently to kind of like.
Looking for cues.
You're looking for cues. And these are the cues you're looking for. And if you don't get them, you should ask. And you should ask them anyway, which is after they tell you that, other than jumping right into your pitch, this is what I think you need to do. You ask them, how much do you generally invest per fund? They say $1 million. Okay, that's one indication. If they say 100 million, that's going to give you some sense of like, where do I fit in that puzzle? I
mean, but if you're working with a placement agent, you should know that going in, but sometimes you don't, right? You still got to ask.
If you have yes, I would still say, even if you're working with a placement agent, it's a great way to get them warmed up.
Yep.
And it's going to basically tell you how to run the rest of the meeting. How many funds do you invest in per year? And they're going to say, if they say 10, okay, that's good to know. If they say
how many of you are already closed?
And they say 1 or 2, okay, that's good. Or if they say 20 or 30, okay, now you have some sense of like, how many slots are there? And then when you say, well, how much do you invest? Hey, we invest 10 to 20 per fund. Great. How many funds do you invest in? 10 a year. How many slots are already filled with re-ups or commitments you've already made? And I don't mean re-up like the wire. But we can have a whole other podcast about re-ups.
Stringer bell.
So you want to know, and then they say, hey, we invest $10 million a fund, we invest in 10 funds, and we've already made 8 commitments this year. Okay. So you're like, there's a very low chance I'm going to get in there. If it's, hey, we invest 10 and we've got 2, okay, now you have some sense of like, how hard is this going to be that get this commitment? Or maybe this is a conversation for the next fund. So you're just starting the relationship. And then you say like, do you like to co-invest? Oh yeah, we love to co-invest. Well, what do you like to co-invest per deal? Oh, $10 million per deal. Okay, so a $10 million fund commitment for $10 million of co-invest per deal. This is a heavy co-invest driven GLP. Good to know. Not good or bad, but good information to know. And
sometimes that number though is not like our LA trip.
I was like, can we give you $1 million for $100 million to co-invest?
Yes. Yeah.
Like we're only getting into your fund. No. Right, because we want to co-invest. It's like, wow.
And that wasn't the weirdest part about that day. The weirdest part that day, if you remember, was
Starbucks.
Waiting at the Starbucks. And there was somebody working on their computer, which is fine. Everybody has a laptop. No. This guy had a full-on tower computer that he had brought into Starbucks with a full-on monitor that he had put on the sideboard and was banging away next to us. Yep. Like it was his regular office.
And later in the day, we saw him with the same computer.
Still there.
No.
In
a shopping cart.
Oh, yeah, I forgot the shopping cart.
Going down the street in a shopping cart, going back to wherever he lives or not. So then you want to know, like, do you have any current GPs that look like us? they'll often say, well, we don't like to disclose that. That would be my guess. But sometimes they say, oh yeah, we just re-upped with XYZ. If XYZ is a direct competitor of yours,
you owe me another Coke.
I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that may reduce the chance that you have to get in there, because they'll go to investment committee and say, didn't we just do a fund that looked just like this? Do we want 2 of them at the same time in the same vintage? Well, maybe not. So that's an important indicator.
But sometimes they didn't get enough of that. Like they loved the sector, and the guy they already invested, they could only get $10 million to work. And so they're like, hey, I want to get another 20 million and another
100%.
So you still got to do it.
You also can say, I know that GP. I can call them and say like, hey, what do you know about them as an LP? What should I know? Do they want more of this? Do they want less of this? What do they like to work with? Can you put in a good word for me? Oftentimes you'll get the, well, we don't disclose this. And then I'll say, well, I could literally just Google it.
Right.
Because it's probably on Preqin or PitchBook or somewhere, but whatever, you get what you get. And then usually at the end of the question list, I'll say like, hey, you do this all the time. You listen to GPs give you the pitch. What do you love it when a GP covers? And when do you hate that they don't cover? And they'll give you like, well, let's get to track record right away. Or I hate it when we just talk about the industry and you don't give me case studies. Or like, I only want to hear 2 case studies. Don't skip the case studies. Don't skip the track record. Don't not talk about the team. So you're basically they're telling you how to arrange the deck. So the stuff they care about might be on page 17. So go to that first and then go back to page 1. Or and they say, I've already done my work on you. I like what you guys are doing. I want to hear more about the team. Okay, great. Or tell me about this deal you did that might be representative of what you guys do. So in literally 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, they're telling you exactly how to navigate the meeting. And I don't see a lot of GPs doing that. They want to get right into the pitch.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake.
Well, because I think sometimes when you're doing a lot of pitches in a row, you're sort of on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
And you do have to be careful the other side of, we've had plenty of potential LPs that want to jump around the deck like a jumping bean to put you off your game.
Yeah.
They're going to hop from team to track record to, hey, what happened with this deal in December of whatever? Like they're sometimes just trying to trip you up for the sake of tripping you up.
And you're sitting across the table from somebody who's flipping through the deck while you're talking to them. You're trying to look at what page they're on. It's just like, don't let that distract.
Or they're doing their cell phone.
Yeah. There's that too. Yeah. So the end of the meeting is going to end the same way. It's a total standoff. You want to ask them, so where do you sign? And they're going to basically say, we're going to keep looking and thanks for the meeting. They do not want to tell you where they're at. Nope. And you may not want to ask for the order because you may not be ready for it. Again, this is all around creating momentum and scarcity and interest and curiosity and all these things. So it's a bit of a standoff. If you're doing it yourself, I would just kind of end it and say like, hey, what are next steps generally for you guys? And they may say, well, send us an invite to the data room, right? Or send me a in person. Back in the day, it would be like, send me an electronic version of this deck so I can share it and put it in our database. They're going to take a lot of notes. They're going to put it in the database. And I don't think you want to push too hard. But at the same time, I wouldn't just end it with like, see you later, right?
Yeah,
just like, hey, what are the typical steps for you guys? What's the process? Or if you have a placement agent, you can kind of just say, hey, thanks, that was great. And let them do the follow-up. And oftentimes an LP
will tell them stuff they won't tell you.
Because let's be straight. LPs are nice people. They don't want to disappoint people. They spend all day. They look at 1,000 funds a year. They say yes to 5 or 10 of them or whatever. Just like us, we say no to hundreds of founders a year, and you don't want to do it, but you got to do it. So again, sometimes they'll tell a placement agent the truth, like, hey, I really like those guys, but they're a little long-winded. Or I got a lot of this. I think they're interesting, but what I have of it is more interesting than what they're offering. So I'm not going to create a slot for these guys. So I think that helps. But like, I wouldn't delude yourself. Nobody's ever convinced an LP to create a whole new slot for something they don't want to do.
Never.
Just like your private equity fund, you know what your strategy is, you know what you're looking for, you know what you have enough of, and you know what you need. They're setting their timeline 12, 24, 36 months in advance. They know who their existing GPs are coming back and about what time frame. They know if they want to give them more money, less money, or the same. They know how many slots they have. You are not convincing an LP to do something they don't want to do. You are trying to influence an LP or a prospective LP to pick you out of all the things they're thinking of doing, they've already decided, I need a small tech GP sometime in 2026. Okay, you got a shot for that.
Yep.
You are not convincing them to add a tech GP in 2026 when it's not in their strategy that they've already set and voted on.
The reason to still do those meetings is a lot of those people will say, we had people that didn't come into fund one, that came into fund two, didn't have a slot, wasn't available to them, but really liked the story. And it's like, keep close, because when you're raising fund two, we're super interested.
Just like sourcing deals, you want to basically start the clock on somebody and see if they did what they said they were going to do. And a lot of funds who are never going to invest, or a lot of LPs who are never going to invest in a fund one, will still take the meeting, and you should still give them a great show. And then you should keep in touch with them and say, hey, the stuff we said we were going to do, we did. And they're going to be more inclined to come into a fund two or a fund three.
And then when you return, 5 to 10 times everybody's money and they want to come in fund two, you shut them down. You're like, that's it. Sorry, buddy.
You don't want to pay 25 cents?
Nice try.
You don't get a no Coke. So isn't that a great problem to have? But again, you have to balance being pushy and being patient. And it's very frustrating, and you don't know. So let's get to a first close. How do you get to a first close?
Well, it's the Alec Baldwin, right? ABC, man.
Always be closing.
Always be closing.
Here's the challenge, and it's gotten more so now in a very crowded market where there's not a lot of liquidity. Different in 2014, though. 2014, people were kind of just coming out of the GFC and getting their legs back under them. So it wasn't easy, 2014, 15. But basically, you're trying to create some sort of scarcity. Hard to convince people there's scarcity on the first close of a first-time fund.
Yep.
Right? What is the incentive if you're raising $200 million to be the first $10 million in the fund? You want to be the last $10 million in the fund.
Yeah, unless you're already some junior rock star at some very famous firm spinning out, like all the Tiger Cubs, spinning out into their own funds. That's already scarcity, right?
Totally.
That is you don't need. If you're in that position, it's a very different story.
Yeah.
Right?
Fewer one and done, but why not dream?
Yep.
Why couldn't you be that? So how can you get people into a first close as a first-time fund?
Well, why do you want to do a first close? Why don't you just want to close it all at once?
One, because if you're raising $200 million, you got to gather $200 million all at the same time, and everybody's on different time frames. Two is, if somebody's going to close, you should, in my opinion, probably differing opinions across the industry, you should close on it.
Yes, if they're handing you money, you should take it.
You should take it. Now, do you close on $1 million and then $1 million and then $1 million? No. Can you bulk it up a little bit? Our first close was $46 million on a $200 million target. One LP was $20 million of that. We put $17 million that day into a company we bought. So we closed on the fund and bought a company. And then we warehoused $10 million with a lender who lent to that company.
Oh, I forgot about merit on that. Yeah.
So we said, hey, within a certain amount of time, we're going to buy that $10 million back from you when we close on more money, because we didn't want to put $27 million into a $46 million close. Why not? I would have loved to. But most of that first close was friends and family and individuals, other than the family office who came in for $20 million. So think of, I don't know what the percentage of 27 is on 46. It's a big percentage.
That's probably really impressive for our listeners. The two PE guys aren't good at really math and arithmetic.
I mean,
not really good at math. It's like not really good, strong swimmer.
It's more than 50%.
Yeah,
go out on
I'm good on that. Yeah.
So if somebody gave you $1 million as an individual, the first capital call you're going to do is 60% of their money in the first capital call.
Yeah,
not a great way to ingratiate yourself. So we were able to defer some of that. We put 17 of the 46 in, still a high percentage. And then we bought back at a subsequent close that warehouse from the lender. But I'd say be super creative. Like, that was very creative. It got $27 million, what ultimately was a $240 million fund in this company. Not as much I would have liked, but it wasn't 17, and that was great.
But that's a cautionary tale, though. If you are starting a fund or something and you're not coming from a prior fund, you may not have lender relationships. And we had a good lender relationship that we knew we worked together on prior deals, so it was an easy conversation. If you're coming into this cold, you may not have the ability to have that creativity.
Yeah,
you just may not know the people that do it.
So I think the ways to get an LP to commit to a first close is scarce. You actually have scarcity, right? You're a known quantity. You've got an existing LPs who want to commit and they want to come in fast, and like, you got to get in or you might lose.
You might lose your slot. Yeah.
So that's a good problem to have. Two is cut a deal. Sometimes early LPs, there are a lot of LPs who are like, I like to come into the first close because I get to dictate the terms. I will come in if you do this, right?
Got to be European waterfall or
Or I want a fee break. I want a carry break. I want contractual co-invest. Those would be the few things, right? I only pay 1% management fee because I'm coming in first. Or I only pay 10% carry because I'm coming in first. Or I get the rights to do 30% of your first three co-investments, first three deals in co-invest at my discretion. Okay, that you might want to cut that deal. We were given advice early on, don't cut any deals in your first fund. It's a great way to raise 20 million bucks. It's a horrible way to raise 200. Because some LPs may come in later and say, I don't like
that deal.
Yeah. I don't like that deal because I want all that money in the companies. I'd rather if you put more money in the companies than give away all this co-invest. But again, you got to do what you got to do, right? You got to get in business. That is the number one goal, get in business. You find a deal. So that's what we did. We had
a deal. Yep.
We were 10 months into the fundraise. We had a deal to close and we unblinded the pool. So for anybody who came in after, in that they knew what was going to be in the fund already. One of the 7 or 8 deals that would be in the fund, but it wasn't completely blind. And we were able to offer co-invest. So we did bring in co-investment into that deal. And we told people, you can't co-invest in the deal unless you're in the fund. And that was risky because they say, oh, never mind. But there was enough interest in the co-invest that people said, hey, fine, I'll come into the fund because I also got the co-invest. Now, we didn't promise them that, like in a contract or in the LPA or their side letter in the LPA. But we said, hey, if you come in proportionally to your GP commit, we'll bring you into the first deal. Again, you got to be creative. You got to create some sort of scarcity because there's very little reason why anybody would come into a first close of a first time fund. And if they do, there's a special place in heaven for the LPs who take the chance on a first time fund of the first time close.
We have to give credit to the family office that trusted us with 20 million bucks.
Yeah. And no strings attached.
No strings attached.
They didn't say, well, we'll come in for 20, but we can't be more than 10% of a close, right? So a lot of that would be a way to reduce your risk. They're like, hey, we believe in you guys. We're going to come in. And they were like, we don't even want the co-invest because we don't like it. And we ultimately convinced them like, you're crazy. You're, almost half the close. You should take some of the co-invest. And like ultimately that was a good decision for them and for us, but like we had to kind of talk them into it. And then the final close, we had multiple closes along the way. Again, we said if people were ready to give us chunky money, we would take it. So I think we went 46, 80, 120, 180, 240, something like that. Yep. So along the way, why would we do that? Well, because every time we closed, we were able to collect fees off of that, pay the team, stop coming out of our pocket for it. We had more money to invest in companies. We got a second deal done before the second close. That was important. So then there's 2 deals in the fund people could look at. Again, unblinding that pool. People felt comfortable. Oh, you did a deal that looked just like the deals you did before. We can look at the diligence. We can talk to management. We can feel good about it. You've proven that
you can source them, you can close them, you can run them.
And that you don't need the old firm you were at to have done that because even though we were running the sector group of another fund, they may have said, oh, maybe there was a guy there who had all the relationships and he didn't source anything, right? Sure, you could diligence that, but that may be a knock on somebody. So we're able to demonstrate that. But after a first close, it does get a little easier. Why? Well, we had a couple really good investors, highly reputable LPs in the first close. One reputationally is a family office. One a fund of funds known for doing an insane amount of due diligence. Yeah,
although that was how far did I slide down the street there on the ice storm? That was a long slide. That was like, that one, I went through an intersection.
Yes.
Waiting for the light to change. I fell down, slid all the way. Yeah, that was bad.
Virginia, no salt, no plows. Yeah, that was a fun near-death experience. But they were known for doing an insane amount of diligence, and it was kind of a signal to the market of like, oh, they survived this fund of funds diligence, and they came in for a small amount through a separate pocket. We didn't get the full allocation from their main fund, but they're like, hey, we've got a pocket, we'll give you some. But it was the same level of diligence.
Yep.
So they were able to say, oh, we know that firm, we trust them. And boy, they do a lot of diligence. So clearly they had passed muster from this. Now, what we forgot to say is going all the way back to the start, in the first 90 days of launching, we had a very large state pension fund say, we're going to take $100 million of the first 200.
Oh, really good. state pension fund.
One of the best.
What was the line? What the somethings spend we must raise, or
I said with the regents, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it was
take we must make or something.
Yeah, with the regents take we must make. Yeah, that was good. So anyway, we had a near death experience or a near like life experience where in the first 90 days we'd been put through the ringer. They wanted to come in. They were creating a slot for us, and the investment committee ultimately said like it seems a little aggressive this earlier in the year because it was like February, March, and they're like, could we like hold off a little bit? Yeah, but we had proven we could go through the diligence. We had proven that the battle station was built, and then we had our first close 10 months after we launched, which now doesn't seem that long, but back in that seemed like forever, especially
because
given
we didn't know what was going to happen.
Especially given it right out of the gates, we thought we were kind of not quite one and done, but like that would have been great to have them, but ultimately. The guy who had said, I really like you guys, but I'm sorry, I can't get it done here. We're just too concentrated right now, which we get, right? This happens. It happens to us. We tell people no.
They were very sophisticated. They knew the market we were in. They asked good questions, great diligence.
He ultimately left soon after to get on the private side. And we would have been stuck with an LP that's half our fund without a sponsor there. And that would have been highly risky for the second fund.
Well, his right hand, remember, threw herself into 3D printing. So I'm sure she's working at the macaroni grill by this point because that hasn't taken off that market.
For sure. So, but after the first close, it does get easier because you're like, hey, there's some signaling. People did some work. Now, if you've just got your friends and family in a first close, I wouldn't shed any tears about it. Hey, you're in business. Go buy a company. But we did have some reputable investors and people were able to say like, oh, if they got there, we could get there. Fast forward a year from there and we did a final close. So even having these reputable investors who did their diligence, who spent their time, it was still a slog. So lots of signaling from those early LPs to other LPs. Oh, this could be worth it if they got there. I think the outcome will be good if I'm interested and have a slot for something like this.
But that when you think about that though, that was in that time frame, we had the 24 meetings. We were 0 for 24.
Yeah.
And then we ended up 1 for 25 that week. Last meeting, the last day on Friday, they committed.
Yeah.
One group.
That was great.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So we were able to get another dealer done. Could you get another deal or two done while you're going from first to second or first to final close? Again, we got to have the capital to do it, but capital attracts LPs. Investments attract LPs. If you've got a co-invest opportunity, you've unblinded the pool a little bit. So you got to keep chopping wood on the sourcing while you're also doing the fundraising. And at some point, it's going to tip over. We raised.
What do you mean by tip over?
Meaning we raised more money in the last 6 weeks of our fundraise than we did in the first 16 months.
Yep.
Because it had gotten enough momentum with enough people that the people we had talked to 16 months before had said, oh, these guys are still at it. That's a good sign. They didn't give up. There's 2 deals in the fund that I could look at. It's 16 months later, so their allocations had changed. Maybe some things had fallen out, or some things had been added. Maybe their strategy had shifted a little bit. Now they wanted this that maybe they didn't want it before.
And they know there's not much room left.
And they're like, hey, if we want to do it, we got to do it now. So again, that's kind of getting to the tip over process. So you just got a tip over point. So just trust the process. And I think, again, who knows what's going to happen, but if you give up, you got to be in it to win it. And if you give up, you got no chance of winning. You miss all the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Which one said it first? The great one or the non-great one?
No, the great one. So we did over 150 meetings to basically get 15 institutions to say yes.
Yes.
Sure. Friends, family, CEOs of ours, founders we had bought companies from. Those are great, but a big institutional LP doesn't really care about them as a signal for quality. It helps that, people you've worked with before want to give you money, but it's not going to make somebody write you a $25 or $50 million
No, but
check.
it's a bad sign if you were in a prior fund and you made some CEOs serious money, like retirement money, and they don't want to put anything in your fund. I had a great relationship with the CEO. We worked hand in glove, and he made $100 million. How much is he investing in the fund? Oh, nothing.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that's probably not.
It's like we did a reference on it and said, "New phone, who dis?"
Yeah,
Not a good sign. Not a good sign.
Well, in those days, it would have been BlackBerry probably.
That's true. That's true. So, all right. So kind of that's the hour and 14-minute version of how do you raise a fund. But let's maybe end this with like, how do you stay sane? One is you just have.
And you? Yeah.
That is true. Well, maybe you don't start
right.
as a sane person
Yes.
to do this, because I don't know, the way you and I grew up, I never thought I'd be sitting in a room, sitting across the table from somebody saying, give me $100 million to do something with it that you don't know what I'm going to do. I'm telling you what I think I'm going to do, but I want $100 million for you to trust me that I'll handle it well.
Well, plus we're old enough that, $6 million man, $6 million seemed like a really lot of money. So asking somebody for $100 million seems insane.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, to that point, I worked for Ingress. They raised $20 million total from the time they started up to going public. That, in the 80s, they started in the 70s. That was $20 million was a lot of money raised.
Yeah, at William Blair, I worked on a $12 million IPO.
Wow.
For a business that ultimately wound up being worth like $3 billion 30 years later. But these were big numbers and we weren't taking it for granted. But this is a volume game. Do not take it personally.
Yeah.
You just have to kiss all the frogs. You need to go to all the meetings. You need to give them the A show. You need to learn while you're doing it and adjust along the way, right? Like I said, put your ego in your pocket. It's easy to get discouraged. Again, we thought we were done 90 days into it, and that might have created monsters. We would have thought we're so good, but like 12 years at Catholic school for me, and several years for you.
Well, and that weird dinner in Florida, which was a little freaky.
That was weird.
Yes, that was weird.
Yeah.
I would say that you said keep yourself sane. I mean, I think as much as we work really well together, when you're doing those days, like get yourself a nice dinner, but go do the thing you want to do. If it's you like to go for a walk, you like to lift, like, man, you're going to get crushed all day. And especially if you're packing those meetings in. I mean, we were doing like 3 to 4 meetings a day.
Yes.
And you're doing the pitch 4 times, you're getting crushed. And then by the end of the day, man, you got nothing left. Yeah. You're on fumes.
Yeah. And if you say, I'm just going to go back to my hotel and watch Law and Order, I'm going to be like, yes, you need to go do that so we can recharge the batteries. Or
doink, doink.
There was one of those meetings where I was not in a good mood. We had Kenny. Kenny was popping off.
Kenny was a hey guy. Hey guy.
Kenny was popping off. He was real smart that day.
He was the sales guy from Die Hard.
And I gave him a little bit of a hip check.
You did.
Halfway through the meeting. And you, after the meeting, you played it super cool. And after the meeting, you grabbed me by the lapels and said, don't you ever do that again. And that was good. I needed that.
But we both agreed. He was a snarky,
Yeah, but I took the bait.
You took the bait, yeah.
Like they say in meditation, don't react, respond.
I Ray Donovan like 3 weeks later. So, hey, how you doing, Kenny? Remember us?
Yeah. So I reacted in the moment when I should have responded, and that was good. So having a partner who's going to call you out. If it's not your partner, it's your placement agent or whatever.
But to that end, though, I think one of the things that's interesting is you'll see how things work. Like you're pitching, right? Especially when you're dealing with something like where you're a deal guy, I'm an operator, right? 2 deal guys might be slightly different, but sometimes a story lands better from me or you that might not be you got to see what's working. So sometimes it's like, oh, I want to be the guy that tells this, or I want to be the guy that does that. It doesn't always land that way. You got to figure out who you're pitching with and how to make it work.
Yeah. So manage your mood, manage your energy, manage your fitness. Don't be out pounding beers at the end of the day. Like get your sleep, get your push-ups in. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Big cliche, but again, fundraisers are taking 2 years these days. The 2-month fundraise is over, even for the brand name firms. And I'd say don't take it personally. Like in the PE business, we're literally saying no to 99.9% of the things we see. We're breaking people's hearts. We're telling them their baby is ugly. So I think you could take a little bit of that for you. And just because you want to raise money doesn't mean people need to care. So get over yourself. And I will say, once you raise that first fund, it's crazy. All of a sudden people are like, oh, you're a private equity firm. You're in business. Where 6 months before they're just like, and you are, and I should care why.
Yeah.
Just like getting your first fund done, people treat you totally differently.
They treat you totally differently.
And you're kind of like, we're the same schmoes we were 6 months ago when you said no and your breath stinks. And now you're calling us and want to get ready to prep for fund 2.
or when you're in town, let's grab a cocktail, or which is great.
And you know what? Don't hold the grudge.
No.
Don't hold the grudge. So that's interesting, and don't let it go to your head, and certainly don't overdo it. And then some LPs just want to see if you have the stamina. They're never going to come into the fund one. They may never come into fund two. They just want to see you and see if you say the same thing over and over again, that you're doing the same thing, and that if you've grown and evolved, right? Most LPs aren't like sharks, like people in private equity. They've got higher EQ generally. They're more thoughtful. They can sit back. Maybe they don't have to do anything. They can just sit back and watch, right? And they take their time. And sometimes they're just like, hey, let's see how this group evolves. I looked like the dynamic was off when I first met them. Let me see if that team can stick together. Or
the dynamic was good. 18 months later, the two guys are clawing at each other in the pitch meeting.
And they're going to talk to each other at AGMs, and they're going to say, oh yeah, I saw those guys. What do you think? And getting that rumor mill around you going by showing up, being nice, saying hi to the receptionist, like being polite, giving him a good show, having some introspection maybe, goes a long way. Yeah,
I guess the only other real point I would say is, if you're doing those marathon meetings, you definitely need to plot out where the restrooms are. You just don't want to be running from meeting to meeting, because you don't always they don't always have rest like that. Those townhomes, they weren't letting us in any restrooms.
I would say the biggest difference between that last time and this time is I'm 10 years older, and when I gotta go, I gotta go.
Yeah. It's an emergency at that point
for sure. So next time, I'm going to talk to Ryan Milligan about how do you actually buy a company. We got a couple of those acquisitions done while we were raising our fund, largely because he was back home, chopping wood, getting deals done.
Yep.
So we'll walk through the details of how to get a company bought, and then we'll follow the phases from there. What do you do after you buy it, and then how do you sell it?
Hopefully you operate it after you buy it, but
I don't know anything about that. That's going to have to be you.
And you'll see that on a future episode.
Bye for now.
Ciao for now.
From the heart of Chicago to all over the globe, a couple private equity geniuses, they share what they know. They love to mess with technology, where the future is sink or swim. It's the Private Equity Fundcast with Devin and Jim. Technology issues and middle market PE-backed companies, they bicker with each other and they don't take themselves too seriously. It's not venture capital, it's private equity. It's the Private Equity Fundcast. Pour yourself a drink and have a seat. It's the Private Equity Fundcast. That equity is private. If PE excites you, let it show and do not hide it. Now the Private Equity Fundcast is about to begin, so give it up for your hosts, Devin and Jim.